Welcome to the Season 2 Back to Basics ITC and CTA podcast. I'm your host, Nyadzani, and I'm sitting with our lovely panelists, Aaron, Dikeledi, and Khopolang. I hope you tuned into the last episode because it was super jam-packed, and even in that episode, we got to learn a little bit more about our panelists and where they are currently in the profession. So guys, how are you feeling today? We are number 2. Bigger and better.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, excited.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. So you know the drill. I like to play a little bit of an icebreaker game before we get started, and yeah, very light-hearted guys. Like, I don't want to be an accountant about things, so I'll be asking them very random questions. Okay. So I'm going to ask each of you the same question and you guys have to answer it. Okay. So there are 2 questions and all of you guys will answer, starting with Khopolang, Dikeledi, Aaron. Okay. My first question is, what's the worst advice you've ever given?
That's so difficult.
I know, right?
It's going to be so controversial. Go to school. That's the worst advice because I feel like there's more to school. Like, I feel like there's more creativity, you know. I think school also restricts us in some ways of finding ourselves more and finding our niche, you know, getting to do whatever fills your cup. Mm-hmm. So I think sometimes you can go. I'm not saying don't. I'm just saying it's not the only option.
Okay. Interesting. Dikeledi.
Cool. And it's the worst advice I've ever been given, right?
No, you have ever given to someone.
Oh, can I say what I've been given? Because I don't know.
Okay, fine. I'll be fair.
Someone has to come back and say, you gave me really bad advice. So the worst advice that I've ever gotten was like, you can be anything you want. You know, when you're growing up and like you're a student that passes, which I think most of us that do accounting do very well, like in high school, and you're multi-talented, like then you're told you can just be whatever you want. I think that's really bad advice because I think the role of parents and caregivers is to help direct a child according to their gifts and their talents, like, and you know what they have like this natural affinity for. So I think I wish I could have received a little bit more guidance or affirmation that you are really good at this, you're really good at that, to guide that decision making. Because I don't think you can be anything you want. You can be in terms of possibility, but I don't think you wanna be anything because some things may be boring, or you know what I mean. So I wish I had had more guidance going into like school, like varsity, and like
Okay, awesome. Aaron, we're not changing the question.
No. Probably telling my girlfriend to date me. I'm kidding. But no, it was a few years ago, maybe more than a few years ago. I can't remember the year, but Sasol shares dropped to 50 Rand or something. And I told people, don't buy. Like, I don't believe in this business.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, it went up like about 100 Rand. I myself didn't buy, and I'm like, oh. So that definitely, that still bothers me. Yeah. Although now the share price has dropped now, so I feel somewhat justified.
Yeah, sort of. Okay, that's awesome. So my next question, this is very random as well.
Okay.
So you're getting a tattoo in 30 minutes. What are you getting?
I wouldn't get a tattoo, but
if you had to, hypothetically speaking.
Maybe my dog
that
died. So yeah, I'll just get that. Yeah.
Okay. Easy for me. I do have a tattoo that I got in varsity. You know, those decisions you make in varsity. It's a butterfly.
Oh.
And yeah, I would get the same.
Okay.
Funny, I've actually no. I would get the 4 elements: earth, wind, fire, air, on my wrist. in color, and then probably also the Pokemon badges from the first Pokemon randomly somewhere.
Sheesh. Okay. Wow, guys. I hope you're enjoying our icebreakers. Hey, if you have any comments, just please, the Gen Zs, I need you to please be interactive on the comment section.
I just have a follow-up question. Dikalady, where's that butterfly?
Don't ask. I'm kidding. It's literally here.
Okay, not a tramp stamp. Whoa. Just needed to.
It was gonna bother you.
I was gonna bother.
Okay.
No, it was not a drunken night.
Yes. Okay. There was a sane mind when
it was
doing
a sane
this.
mind, but a very young mind.
Yes. All right, guys. That brings us to our next segment, which is comprehension and reading. So yeah, it's also quite a big thing and topical thing among students, especially those that aren't English spoken. And yes, our exams are in English, and yes, you've managed to get to where you are in your varsity career, or if you're writing your ITC path, you've managed to get here, but students still do struggle with it. And I think it's such an important topic that we can't just let slide. And today we're going to be digging deeper into this topic, which brings me to my first question. Aaron, what is comprehension and why is it so important? And why do you think students have an issue with this? So it's quite a loaded question.
It is.
Yeah.
I think I'll start from the back. Why do students have such a big issue? I'm very critical of the education system that we've grown up in South Africa. If you're all like me in your 30s, you probably grew up with outcomes-based education, OBE, which was a failed education system in the Scandinavian states when they brought it over to SA. Again, don't understand why. So, and I also come from a background of teachers. My mom, grandma, aunts, a lot of teachers in my family, right? So fortunately for me, I read from a young age. Before I went to school, I could read. In grade 1, I was reading at grade 3 level because I love books. And I think what we're seeing now with Gen Z, they didn't grow up with books the way we did. I used to go to the library, win reading competitions. So it's partly the education system's fault, but also I think just the changing world. It's not a South African issue. It's an issue throughout the world where we've become so digital that people don't really read anymore. If you look at social media, my favorite and / worst app, and I'm still going to call it by its old name, Twitter. People, that's like a cesspool, right? People just arguing deliberately, but they're not reading to understand what the other person is saying. And it takes me back to my point is people are reading to respond. So you're reading the question paper thinking, this is the trigger. Ooh, this is how I'm going to respond to it. You're not reading to say, okay, this is the scenario. These are the things happening in the scenario without trying to answer the question before you even get the question. Now you get the question and the thing you thought that was going to be a big topic is not, now you're thrown because you read to respond. Right? So you need to read to understand, engage, feel what's happening, right? And it takes it back to the word, right? Comprehension, spelled of the word comprehend. Do you comprehend what I am saying? And I think that's where students are missing the plot, is they're so scared and they think the time is not enough and whatever, that they just go through the scenario. I've seen a lot of students write answers on the side. Why are you doing a calculation if you don't even know what you're going to be asked, right?
Yeah.
So, the big issue with comprehension is ultimately falls down to reading to respond instead of reading to understand. And one way I think you can get better at this is just reading in general. You don't have to read books. You can be reading news articles. You can be reading a long thread on Twitter. I love those random threads that teach me something that I didn't know about. That's the same thing. It's still reading. So maybe I think what the issue should, or rather the solution to this is pause, reflect, and just try to understand what you're reading instead of trying to find the answers in what you're reading.
Okay, you actually touched on my next follow-up question, but I'm going to direct it to Dikalady. who is a digital platforms guru. What advice could you give students in terms of the way they use social media to improve their comprehension? Because everyone's always on TikTok, everyone's always on Instagram or Twitter. Like, what advice could you give?
Yeah. So my view is actually that digital platforms, social media platforms, they make education and knowledge accessible, actually. So if you think about, I remember meeting Prof. Wiseman Nkutlu, and he was giving a talk, and he was talking about, he was the first black CA to qualify in South Africa, and he was describing how when they were learning, like think about learning like IT audit, and how he had to conceptualize what a computer looks like. Like before he even gets into the auditing and the controls, he's still trying to think, but what does this thing look like? What am I doing? What am I clicking? I mean, he didn't even know that, you're clicking. So fast forward to today, where we know what, we have the knowledge, and this technologies can make this information alive to us. So comprehension in our environment, what does it mean? It means you understand. Accounting is business language. It's literally telling the story of businesses, through numbers and accounting for it. So do you understand business? Do you understand when they say this is a business in the manufacturing industry? Can you watch videos around the manufacturing industry? So that's my advice. My advice is there is now knowledge for us as people that would not necessarily comprehend what an industry is, what a bank reconciliation is, to actually go online and look up some of these things. My opinion is that if you look at the numbers, if you look at like how black students specifically in the profession struggle, is because we don't have like the business background. A lot of like my colleagues in Bloom would be like either their dad or mom was a CA already, or they just here because they want to go work in their family business afterwards. They just want to qualify so that they can go work in their family business. So it means they grew up knowing like what a bank recon looks like, even if they didn't know how to do it. But when they're reading that paper or they're reading the information and they're learning these subjects, they have a little bit of a context. And I know for sure, like even an invoice, I did not what is an invoice? What does that mean? So I think young people really now have an opportunity to actually learn more, to watch videos and say, what does that thing look like? What does, when they would say you sit in a room with, like you ask the client, like you're sitting in a room with a client. We didn't know what that looks like. What do you mean we're in a team and we're sitting in a room with a client? But these are things that are now online that through different, mediums. So he spoke about reading. I think reading, not just about accounting, as he said, but learning about the world of business, and learning, in investing, they say invest in businesses you understand. Yeah. And I would say the same. Like if you go into a Checkers, how about you become curious about how does this business work? And if I'm an accountant working here, what is it that I would be accounting for? When they said a stock count, we had no idea what a stock count is. We couldn't conceptualize it. Yeah. But now we have access to information to actually really comprehend, as the word says. Yeah. So I think just use social media for the right things. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Guys, I hope you're listening. It's quite interesting. Kopalang, have you ever had issues with comprehension? And if you did, how did you overcome those issues?
So when I was in CTA, I got a study coach because I was drowning. I just didn't see the end, right? So I got a study coach and I sat with her and I told her, listen, I think I'm struggling with comprehending what's going on. And the number one thing she told me was, I think you students like highlighting. Ditch the highlighters. Because if I can ask you, right, you've highlighted pink, blue, yellow, red, whatever, and if I can ask you what that paper is talking about, would you be able to tell me exactly what it says, right? Because that's the first thing she told me was, ditch that highlighter, have pens, right, to actually read and also write, what is this about? And that actually helped me. And she says, she told me, read slowly. Don't just rush to read, because you're going to read again and again and again. So once you get it done once, slowly, you will understand what's going on. And I started practicing that, to just read line by line, but not rushing to highlight. Don't highlight. Just understand what this is talking about so that you can actually conceptualize what they're talking about. Then you may use a highlighter, but even till today, highlighters are not really my favorite.
I hate highlighters. I actually was tutoring a CTA student this week, and we were going through a test, and she had highlighters in her scenario. And so one of the things I do is we go through your scenario line by line, and she missed something because it was in between two highlights. It was an easy mark. And that's why I hate highlighters, because when you get required, you come back. What do you look at? The highlighted things, right? And a lot of the time that's why I said you need to read to understand. How are you going to understand a scenario if you're highlighting certain portions? Every single word, as an example, when the first sentence will tell you the company's name in any type of exam, tax, accounting, math, doesn't matter. It's going to say Pro Bean Studio Pty Limited. That Pty is important. It's there for a reason. It limits certain things. It brings certain sections into account. Take the Pty away, it brings different things into account, right? So every little thing is there. I was an academic. I know those words aren't just there, right? And if we just put everything in tables, you guys would get 100%. So how do we make it harder? Well, simple. English.
But also because in the real world, no one is going to give you anything in a table.
Exactly.
In the real world, a client is going to sit in front of you and they're going to tell you about their business. Then you have to comprehend what they're saying, translate it into this language. I think what I want to add is that when you're talking about the structure, like the more you read to comprehend, the more you learn to structure things in your head. Like, it's like automatically you saying, okay, I know this belongs here, this belongs here, this belongs here. And even though papers are different, they're the same in that they have the same structure. You know what I'm saying? So comprehension is also taking the information in the format that has been provided and structuring it in a way that makes sense to you. And that requires active reading and active engagement, with what you're reading, and not just going over the thing. I forgot the other thing that I wanted to say, but I'll probably add it at some point.
All right, awesome. I have a question for you, Dikeledi. So I mentioned this earlier on, where I know a lot of people are in the ITC and CTA, maybe English isn't a big problem, but it is still a problem where people are like, I think in Zulu or I think in Afrikaans. And sometimes when I'm reading these standards or tax or whatever it is, it's just so technical. I don't understand this or that, and I end up cramming it, but I don't really get what's going on. How would you advise someone who's in that situation to, improve on their English, or maybe, let's say, ask better questions to get to the final, objective of what that act or standard was trying to say?
Yeah. Sure. I think this one, it's a difficult one in that, like, reading is a muscle. It's something like, if the first day of reading the Financial Mail or whatever it is that you read, even as a CA, it's just, gibberish. You don't know what you're reading. The more you read, the more you start getting, into the groove of things. So I think there are certain things that, there's no shortcut to certain things.
Yeah.
I think the sooner as students we get into the habit of just reading and reading out of interest and not just reading when we have to, I think the better. But I think, if you're in the stage where it's really now there's a goal, the goal is to pass, I think just reading reading more in that area. So reading more about text. And we spoke earlier about how we now have access, like Google is there. So actually just doing a little bit more to say, I really am interested in this topic. I want to know a bit more. Can I Google and get a source that explains it better? Or can I watch something that explains it better? And also really utilizing our community. I found that people that were very good at studying together and creating a community really succeeded in the exams, and people that were very isolated and were going at this alone really, really struggled, even if they were really, really smart. And it's a mindset shift that we all have to do, because for the most part of our studies, we are like loners. Like CA students, when we get to articles, we actually struggle to learn how to work in teams, because it's your own journey, and up to that far, you've made it alone. So if there's that struggle, then you need to be with other people so that they can explain it in your language. I used to do texts on Lesedi FM. It was a Psycha initiative, actually. And it was in Sesotho. So there are people that are grasping these concepts in our languages. So sit with each other and, learn and engage and practice your muscle. Because in the exam, you're just doing what you've been practicing. The exam is just a demonstration of what you've been practicing. So the more you can practice that reading and that engagement and like asking each other, then when you get to the exam, it's just a habit. It's now a habit. So the answer to this is there's really no shortcut. If you struggle, once again, in the last episode, we spoke about exercising muscles. Be very clear what you're struggling with and target that muscle in different ways to get the results.
Okay, perfect. Sheesh, guys. I hope you're learning a lot. I'm actually going to challenge you panelists on the comment section when this video is up. Please put a link to certain websites where you feel have of importance, basically. I'm going to repeat that. Sorry. So guys, what an interesting discussion today, and I'm going to challenge everyone on this panel discussion, once this video is up, to please post links to reading sites that are of interest. It doesn't only have to be accounting, but it could just be in business, industry, or even just what you're passionate about. And, people can start going onto the links and obviously reading and following the posts that they post on those specific links, please. And also viewers, please also share your thoughts and your sites that you feel are important. Aaron, is there a back to basics recommended approach for comprehension and diction?
So I wouldn't say that it's a one size fits all. We are quite, customized. We're a smaller, I guess, group. We're not a board course. We're more, I would say, a mental and type of course. We help you to get mentally ready. So it's not a one size fits all. I can speak to my personal approach, and most of us share similar sentiment in this. For me, it's usually about, like you said, it's a muscle. You need to practice this thing. When I was an academic trainee at Nelson Mandela University, I had a voluntary class for our CTA students, specifically for math, management accounting and financial management. It was on a Friday afternoon. Initially it started, less than half of the class, maybe 10 people. By the end of the year, it was full. There wasn't even space for all the students to attend because it was that popular. And my simple premise was, I'd ask you for about 2 hours. Of that hour, now your reading time is normally 30 minutes, but of that hour, we'd spend an hour you just reading. I'd sit there, do whatever I was doing for that hour while you read, and then after that, we'd discuss line by line, how can you use this information? So to take it back to my PTY and LTD point, PTY, first thing that comes to my mind is, when it's evaluation, I'm going to have a marketability type of discount. Certain things are not they don't have to be mandatory audited. Companies Act, only certain things. They don't have to do King. They don't have to do this. They have to do that. Limited, mandatory audit. King's implic. Companies Act, director's liability, certain tax things comes. That's the type of, and this needs to happen within a space of a second when you see that word. The only way you get to, pick up these things is by practicing more, reading more. There's a point you mentioned earlier, I forgot to come back to it, where you said you when you missed something, you'd write it down. Never make that mistake again. I did that in CTI. I called it my little black book because I used those plain A4 quires. But I would have all the things I've missed throughout. And essentially what I then done was build a database of questions I knew or answers I knew I'd missed. Eventually, at the end of the year, I would never miss them. So we'd get a warehouse scenario. I love it. I love a warehouse scenario. Why? Security guard. Boom, 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 boom. Easy marks. Warehousing, stock counts. Do. If there's a computer, brilliant. Access controls, master file, So these are things that I practiced, I read, I picked up, I sat down, I noted them. And so ultimately, yes, it's practice. You need to train this muscle. I read a lot randomly. Guys, you open your Chrome. We all have Chrome on our phone. Click Chrome, click New tab, scroll down. There's news articles. Based on whatever you were searching, it's going to give you things of your interest. Read those things. These things come out into play. I had a situation, I was dealing with a student. The company was based on Take-A-Lot. And I was just like, Take-A-Lot hasn't made money in the last 5 years or something. Last year, I think they made a 25 million rand loss. Boom, 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 boom. Further down in the scenario says, this company's been struggling. Yeah, because I read. So now I know how to answer. I anticipated that, and the lecturer brought it in. I told them, Amazon, Temu, these things are coming. There's new tax legislation to tax these guys to protect Take-A-Lot and all these local retailers. I read. I could put that answer into the scenario, so you need to read. It doesn't have to be anything, but reading will help you in this.
That's a powerful point, because I think what he's saying as well is that as lecturers are setting questions based on what's happening in the world.
Yes.
So when you're aware of what's happening in the world, you put yourself one step ahead, right? And the other part was around what I said earlier about structure. For him to say, it's not just reading, it's PTY, these are the implications. So it means in your head you have a structure that firstly, what is it? Is it a private company or is it a public company? And then that structure will be the same structure in every paper. But you also need to know the knowledge. There's knowledge behind that structure. So it's not just a matter of, I read the scenario and I understand it. It's what are the implications of the information there? And have you structured it in your head as far as what it's going to implicate? So if there's a tax question, you know which parts of the paper you've read have tax consequences. And not everything is relevant. I think that's the other thing. The information that's provided, not every single sentence and word is relevant. And part of comprehension is being able to actually know what is not that relevant. And you might come back to it should it be relevant, but you need to know that not everything requires your intense thinking and
highlighting.
Yeah.
Well, perfect. This is leading me to my final question, Khopalang. You get 20 minutes, you get your paper, and you get 20 minutes reading time.
Yes.
What do you do at that 20 minutes reading time? What was the best advice you were given, and what can you transfer to the students watching this in terms of planning and reading in those 20 minutes?
Okay. So, first of all, breathe. I promise you that I always say sometimes it was just because I could sit down for a couple of seconds and you breathe. Right? Breathe. And after that, write those words of affirmation, right? Then start reading. And be present in that scenario. Because sometimes you just read something, but you're not actually grasping it. You're not in the moment. Be present and read. Just sit there and read. Don't think about what are they going to ask me, what's going to happen, because that's going to take all of your energy and put it in the wrong place. You need to put your energy into reading, like you're putting in your time here. So read. So I would read for 20 minutes and I wouldn't rush myself. Like I would see people just rushing through the scenario and I'm just like, okay, I'm not rushing. I'm probably on page 2 and you're on page 10, but that's fine. I'll just read, right? And that actually helped me because once I read everything and I could get the required, then I planned that, okay, this is the number of marks I'm given. Okay, my times 1.5. These are the number of minutes I need to spend on this specific question. And otherwise, if you spend over that, I'm sorry, you're not going to make it. So just be strict with yourself. I know it's hard to leave that question where you're like, oh my goodness, I need to give that conclusion. It's so beautiful. But you're actually getting, let's say, you'll get 50% and 0%. Whereas if you just get 50, 50, 50, 50, you've passed. So plan, be strict with yourself, and move on. Like, it's fine. You'll never get it again. Just move on. It's life. We move. So that's what I used to do. And that's basically that. To breathe, guys, breathe. I promise you, if you start breathing, you will notice how your stress levels decrease.
I like what she said about, the breathe, read, take your time. I would take more time than the average student to read.
Yeah.
Not because I'm a slow reader, I'm a fast reader, but just to take my time to make sure I've read everything. I don't want to come back and flip, where did I read that? Where did I read that, right? The only time I'm going back to the scenario is for numbers that I need to break down and calculations that I need to do. I don't want to read to understand contextual things. Do you know what I'm saying? So I like that you mentioned that. Take your time. For me, may not necessarily be relevant to ITC. It was APC because it's the most recent one I can remember. The lady in front of me had 2 pages of answers while I was still reading. I finished before her.
Oh, wow.
It's because I didn't need to jump back to my scenario every time to find out what I'm answering.
True.
Can I just add,
yes, sure.
like, know yourself. Have what she's describing. One is the coach that she had, but also the understand yourself and how you can get the best out of yourself. So like what Aryan just described, that's how he learns. Like, he needs to read, comprehend, and then he will start answering. If you're the type of person that sort of reads and then jumps and goes back, then that's, I don't want to say it's fine, because maybe not. I don't know. I feel like he's gonna.
I'm gonna slap you over the wrist.
Right next to yes. The point that I'm making is that what matters is that you understand yourself and that you keep improving yourself within that context of your understanding. So going back to the questions, it shouldn't be a matter of it's because you hadn't prepared enough, but it should be because that's how you prefer. You like to go back just to remind yourself. Some people, I like to just make sure that I didn't miss it. And then the more you do that, the more you build confidence in yourself. I think know yourself, know your weaknesses. Knowing yourself also means know your weaknesses and be honest about them and tackle them so that you can get the best outcome out of your exam.
Sheesh. Wow, guys. What a session again. Like, it just keeps getting better and better. Are there any closing comments from you guys before we end the show?
Yeah. Again, on the reading, don't read with a sense of dread or a sense of, I have to do this test. This test is so bad. Read like, okay, this lecturer took their time to set a puzzle or game, whatever how you want to frame it, for me. It's a challenge. Who doesn't love being challenged? You wouldn't be here if you weren't a little competitive, if you didn't want to beat your lecturer. That's how I saw it. I was like, if I get 50.5, I win. No, that's it. So for me, that's how I looked at it. And that once I changed my mindset to that point of view, that I just need 50.5, I was okay.
Yeah. We weren't trying to be overachievers.
No.
We were just trying to
as I say, I finished 11th in
Wow.
ITC.
There's the overachiever, guys. Yeah, no, guys, you've said some very, very valuable inputs. And I guess from my perspective as well, I'm quite a visual person as well. And I see through pictures. So one thing that also helped me a lot was when I was reading the scenario, I would draw pictures. Like, dude, they were just stickmen, like they weren't anything hectic. But I would draw pictures like of each scenario, and you know, that would help me remember the scenario, and you know, when reading the question, I would know exactly what part of the scenario I maybe need to go back to because I've already drawn the picture. So never be scared to do something like that. If you're that person that is visual and you read through pictures, draw those little stickmen at the bottom or whatever to explain the situation or explain the scenario. It really, really does improve your understanding. But that's just my closing comments as well. But anyways, guys, this was such a great session. And if you have any comments, please, 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 Gen Zs, I encourage you to please engage with us, and one of the representatives will get back to you ASAP. Like, let's share the knowledge. Let's use our social media ability for good things to help the next person. So you are helping the next person by engaging. So I am looking forward to your comments. But thank you guys for joining me today. It was super, super awesome. And as usual, I always end the day with a quote for the day. And today's quote is, I used to think that communication was key until I realized comprehension is. You can communicate all you want to someone, but if they don't understand you, it won't reach them the way you need it to. Yeah. Let's actually ponder and think about that. And I'm actually excited to hear what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Anyways, guys, thank you for joining. Until next time, bye-bye.